All right, students, let's go ahead and go over a few of these problems. I'm going to pick one from each section. And even though, for example, in the direction it says use a proportion, in the second section it says use an equation, I'm going to let you write an equation every time. That's all I end up doing. To me, it's easier. Um, all right, so let's just do number one. 8 is, now you got to remember, every time you see is, that means equals, and of means multiplication. That's for all of these problems. That's your key. So 8 is what percent of 64? So to solve that, we divide each side by 64. That simplifies down to 1/8. And if you put 1 divided by 8 in your calculator, you will get 0.125. And that's the decimal, but now it wants the percent. So percent, we move it 2 places to the right. And so it's 12.5%. And there's our answer. Same thing as multiplying by 100. All right, next section. What percent of, so what percent of means times 52 is 39. Okay, so again, divided both sides by 52. Reduce that fraction 13, goes in both those numbers, and that's going to give me 3/4, which is 0.75. That's the decimal, and then that is, this is what percent. Move it 2 places to the right or multiply by 100, and you get 75%. Okay, let's go ahead and do 13. 30 is equals 20%. We change that to a decimal. 0.2 of means times what number? X or whatever variable you want to use. So that means divide by 0.2 on both sides. When you do that, that's the same thing as dividing by 1/5. Remember, 0.2 is 1/5 as a fraction, which you multiply by the reciprocal of 5. Okay, so 5 times 30 is 150. This is if you went 30 divided by 0.2, you would also get 150. Okay, so there's that one from that section. All right, backside now. Direct and inverse variation. Direct. So if y equals kx or y equals k over x. Why don't you remember k stands for constant of variation. Okay, and that's always going to be the first thing we're solving for is the k, and then we'll plug that back into one of these two equations. Now, how do you know which equation to use? If it says direct, I want you to automatically remember numerator. So x is in the numerator. So this is the direct variation one right here. Inverse, I want you thinking denominator. So that is this one. X is in the denominator. Okay. So now you know which one to use depending on if it says direct or inverse. So you notice the top ones here varies directly. So we're using this first one, y equals kx for every one of these ones. And then down below, y varies inversely. So we're using the y equals k over x for all of these ones. Okay, so I'll do one from each. All right, let's go ahead and just do number one. So we're using the y equals kx one because it's directly. So it says if y equals -4, so I substitute -4 in for the y. When x equals 2, so remember we're going to solve for k to begin with, so we divide each side by 2 to get k equals -2. Now we go ahead and substitute that -2 into the equation, so we have y equals -2x. Okay, we just solve for k, we plug it back in there. And now we go ahead and it says find y when x is -6. So we're finding y when x is -6. So we substitute in -6 for x. And 2 times -6 is -12. There's our answer. All right, so that's directly. That's how you're going to do every one up in the top 8. And now here's 9 through 16 inversely. Inversely denominator. So we're using y equals k over x. Again, we're going to do the same thing. They're going to give us the x and the y, and we're going to solve for k to begin with, and then substitute that k back into this equation. And then they will give us either the x or y, and we'll solve for the other one. So let's say we do number 10 here. So if y is 16, 16. When x is 4, substitute 4 in for the x. We solve for k. Cross multiply, you get k equals 64. So now you go ahead and use that equation. Y equals 64 over x. This is find y when x is 6. 64 divided by 6. And that's going to give you 10 and 2/3, because 6 times 10 is 60, and you have 4 remainder. 4 over 6 is 2/3. Okay, if you don't use the exact answer of 10 and 2/3, you could also use 10.6 repeating bar, because that's what 2/3 is. That's a decimal. You cannot leave it as 10.6 or 10.7. Doesn't say to round. It asks for exact answer. So it's either 10 and 2/3 or 10.6 repeating bar. All right, that will go ahead and cover any of these. From 9 through 16, you're using this y equals k over x each time. Okay,